The American Civil War erupted like a storm, tearing through the heart of a divided nation. Soldiers, many of them young and inexperienced, marched into the conflict with more hope than preparation. Amid the chaos, as men carried rifles and dreams of glory, an unexpected group of companions joined the fray: dogs. These four-legged creatures, often overlooked in the grand narrative of war, played crucial roles in the lives of the soldiers they accompanied. They didn't wear uniforms or carry weapons, yet their presence on the battlefield brought comfort, courage, and an irreplaceable sense of companionship. The story of dogs in the Civil War begins, as most war stories do, with necessity. Soldiers brought dogs from home, unwilling to leave behind the loyal companions who had stood by them through peacetime. Others found their canine allies on the road to war, strays who followed columns of marching troops or wandered into camps. Initially, their presence was tolerated rather than celebrated. Military leaders, focused on strategy and logistics, had little regard for the animals trailing behind their men. But the soldiers themselves saw something else: a source of comfort, a piece of home carried into the brutal unknown. For many soldiers, the war was their first time away from family, and the loneliness of camp life weighed heavily on them. Dogs became a bridge to a world they'd left behind, offering an unspoken connection to the farms, towns, and families they longed to return to. The sight of a dog wagging its tail or playfully chasing after a stick in a camp filled with weary, battle-worn men was enough to lighten spirits, if only briefly. Dogs reminded soldiers of better days, and gave them a reason to smile amid the grim reality of war. These animals quickly became more than just mascots or companions. They adapted to the rhythms of military life, proving their worth in ways no one had anticipated. In the camps, dogs acted as natural guardians, barking at unfamiliar sounds and alerting soldiers to potential threats. At night, when the darkness seemed impenetrable and enemy movements could occur under cover of shadows, dogs served as sentinels. Their sharp ears and keen noses often detected intruders before the soldiers themselves did. In this way, they became silent, invaluable members of the troops, earning the respect of even the most skeptical commanders. One story tells of a stray mutt named Jack, who attached himself to a regiment from Pennsylvania. Jack had no pedigree or formal training, but his loyalty to his new human companions was unshakable. During battles, he would pace anxiously behind the lines, his eyes fixed on the men he had come to regard as his pack. When the fighting ceased, Jack would dart onto the battlefield, weaving through the smoke and debris, searching for the wounded. Soldiers marveled at his determination, following him to locate comrades who might otherwise have been left behind. Jack's actions saved lives, and though he couldn't understand the words, the soldiers' gratitude was evident in their gentle pats and whispered thanks. Stray dogs like Jack weren't the only ones to find a place among the troops. Some units had official mascots, dogs, who were as much a part of the regiment as the men themselves. These mascots became symbols of pride and unity, rallying the soldiers in moments of despair. The story of Sally, a brindle Staffordshire Terrier who served with the 11th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry, exemplifies this bond. Sally marched alongside the men, shared their rations, and stood watch at their camps. During battles, she refused to cower or flee, staying close to the regiment's colors. At Gettysburg, Sally was found after the fighting had ended, standing guard over the bodies of her fallen comrades. Her loyalty was unshaken, even in the face of death. As the war progressed, the value of these dogs became undeniable. Some dogs, especially those with a knack for navigating treacherous terrain, were used to carry messages between units. This was no small feat. A dog running through a battlefield had to avoid bullets, explosions, and the chaos of men and horses. Yet time and again, they succeeded, delivering critical information that could turn the tide of an engagement. Their courage under fire became the stuff of legend, though few of these tales were formally recorded. The dogs weren't immune to the dangers of war. Many were wounded or killed, their fates tied to the men they served. But their contributions, whether as protectors, messengers, or morale boosters, left an indelible mark on the soldiers who fought alongside them. For every story of heroism, there were countless quiet moments. A soldier scratching a dog's ears after a long march, a pup curled up beside a weary man's bedroll, a wagging tail greeting survivors after a harrowing battle. These moments, small but significant, underscored the profound connection between man and dog, a bond that transcended the horrors of war. By the time the war ended, dogs had proven themselves to be more than mere pets or curiosities. They were essential allies, offering companionship and courage in equal measure. Though their names and deeds were rarely inscribed in history books, their legacy endured in the hearts of the soldiers who knew them. As the country began to rebuild, many of these dogs returned home with their human companions, living out their days far from the battlefields where they had once stood watch. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense, but in the eyes of those they served, they were every bit as heroic. In the heat of battle, when the world devolves into chaos and every moment carries the weight of life or death, the role of dogs during the Civil War extended beyond simple companionship. These animals, often regarded as mere camp followers at first, began to take on roles that required not only courage, but also an innate understanding of the unpredictable dynamics of war. The battlefield, with its cacophony of gunfire and cries, was a terrifying place for even the most seasoned soldiers. Yet dogs, with their heightened senses and natural instincts, became invaluable participants in ways no one could have foreseen. One of the most notable contributions of dogs during the Civil War was their role as messengers. Communication was a vital but perilous task, as carrying messages across the battlefield often meant navigating through a deadly maze of bullets, artillery fire, and enemy lines. While human couriers risked their lives to deliver critical orders, dogs proved to be faster and less conspicuous. Trained to carry small pouches or notes tied to their collars, they darted across the battlefield with a singular focus. Their small size and agility allowed them to evade obstacles that would slow a human courier, and their keen senses often helped them detect and avoid danger. There is a famous account of a dog named Bruno, a large and fearless mastiff, who served with a Union regiment during a particularly intense skirmish. When the lines of communication between two units were severed by Confederate artillery, Bruno was entrusted with a message that could determine the outcome of the engagement. With a note securely fastened to his collar, he sprinted across open ground, weaving through explosions and gunfire. Despite being grazed by a bullet, Bruno reached his destination, delivering the message that allowed reinforcements to arrive just in time. His bravery turned the tide of the battle, earning him a place in the hearts of the soldiers he served. Beyond their role as messengers, dogs also demonstrated extraordinary bravery as rescuers. The sprawling battlefields of the Civil War often left the wounded scattered across vast areas, many of them too injured to call out for help. Dogs, with their acute sense of smell and hearing, became life-saving companions to medics and stretcher-bearers. These animals would roam the battlefield after the fighting had ceased, sniffing out soldiers who were still alive but unable to move. Their ability to navigate the wreckage of war, from collapsed trenches to dense underbrush, made them indispensable in locating survivors who might otherwise have been overlooked. One such hero was a dog named Major, who became known for his uncanny ability to find wounded soldiers. Major belonged to a Confederate regiment and had been brought to the front lines by his owner, a young soldier from Georgia. During one particularly brutal engagement, Major began to bark and tug at his owner's sleeve, leading him to a comrade who had been buried under debris from a collapsed trench. Word of Major's abilities spread, and he soon became a regular companion to the regiment's medics. Soldiers recalled how a major would return to camp with pieces of fabric torn from uniforms, signaling that he had found someone in need of help. His efforts saved countless lives, and even in the midst of war, his actions inspired awe and gratitude. Another role in which dogs excelled was as sentinels and guards. In the unpredictable environment of the Civil War, camps were vulnerable to surprise attacks, especially at night. Soldiers relied on their dogs to serve as an early warning system. Their sharp senses allowed them to detect the approach of enemy troops or the rustling of spies attempting to infiltrate camp boundaries. Dogs would growl softly or bark to alert their handlers, often giving soldiers precious moments to prepare or thwart an ambush. In some cases, their presence alone was enough to deter potential attackers, as a barking dog could quickly expose their position. In addition to these practical roles, dogs often found themselves serving as mascots, rallying symbols of courage and unity for entire regiments. These animals became emblems of resilience, embodying the spirit of the men they accompanied. One such dog was a terrier named Harvey, who traveled with a Union regiment throughout the war. Harvey had a knack for sensing when morale was low, often wandering through the ranks during moments of quiet despair and nuzzling the men with his small, scruffy face. His antics during lulls in combat, chasing his tail, barking at birds, or playfully tugging on the hems of soldiers' coats, brought laughter and a sense of normalcy to an otherwise grim existence. Harvey's most famous moment came during a retreat, when the regiment was forced to abandon its position under heavy enemy fire. The men, retreating in disarray, looked back to see Harvey standing defiantly on a hilltop, barking at the approaching Confederate forces as if daring them to come closer. Inspired by his courage, the soldiers regrouped and launched a counterattack, ultimately driving the enemy back. Harvey's bravery was remembered as a turning point in the battle and cemented his place in the regiment's history. Despite their invaluable contributions, the dangers these dogs faced were immense. Many were injured or killed, their fates intertwined with the soldiers they served. Their acts of courage often went unrecorded, lost in the vast tapestry of war. Yet for those who witnessed their bravery, these dogs were more than animals. They were comrades, heroes, and symbols of hope. The story of dogs during the Civil War is a testament to their adaptability, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. Whether carrying messages under fire, rescuing the wounded, standing watch in the dead of night, or simply providing comfort to weary soldiers, these animals proved time and again that they were more than mere bystanders in the theater of war. They were silent warriors whose deeds, though unsung, played a vital role in the survival and success of countless men on the battlefield. Their legacy, though often overlooked, remains a powerful reminder of the courage and compassion that can exist even in the darkest moments of history. Amid the relentless brutality of the Civil War, where lives were often reduced to numbers and survival hinged on the slimmest margins, an extraordinary bond emerged between soldiers and their canine companions. This relationship was forged not only through shared hardship, but also through the unique emotional support dogs provided in the darkest of times. While rifles and tactics determined the course of battles, it was the unspoken connection between man and dog that often sustained the human spirit. These animals became more than tools of war. They were trusted friends, loyal confidants, and symbols of hope in an otherwise bleak existence. For soldiers, many of whom were young and far from home for the first time, the presence of a dog offered a rare sense of normalcy. The camps were harsh, filled with mud, disease, and the constant threat of enemy attack. Amid this hardship, a dog wagging its tail or resting its head on a soldier's lap became a simple yet profound reminder of the lives they had left behind. Dogs bridged the emotional gap between the horrors of war and the memories of family, farms, and a peace that seemed increasingly distant. Soldiers often spoke to their dogs as they would to a trusted friend, sharing their fears, hopes, and regrets in moments of solitude. The dogs listened silently, offering no judgment, only companionship. One poignant story comes from a Union soldier named Matthew, who adopted a stray beagle he named Scout. Scout had wandered into the camp one morning, bedraggled and thin, and Matthew immediately took him in, sharing his meager rations despite his own hunger. Over time, Scout became a constant presence at Matthew's side, accompanying him on marches, lying at his feet during rest periods, and curling up beside him at night. When the shells began to fall, and the air filled with the deafening roar of battle, Scout would press close to Matthew, his body trembling, but his loyalty unwavering. To Matthew, Scout was not just a dog, he was a lifeline, a living connection to the humanity that war so often stripped away. The bond between soldiers and their dogs was not just emotional, but also deeply practical. Dogs seemed to sense their owners' moods, responding with a quiet comfort that words could not provide. After a harrowing day on the battlefield, when exhaustion and grief threatened to overwhelm the men, a dog's playful antics or affectionate nuzzle could lift spirits in ways no speech or encouragement could achieve. They were steadfast in their loyalty, asking nothing in return but the occasional scrap of food or a kind word. This unwavering presence became a source of strength for soldiers, reminding them that even in the midst of war, kindness and connection still had a place. The lengths to which soldiers went to protect their dogs underscore the depth of this bond. In one account, a Confederate soldier named James carried his dog, a small terrier named Dixie, through miles of retreat after she was injured by a stray bullet. Weighing barely more than a musket, Dixie rested in James's arms as he trudged through swamps and over hills, refusing to leave her behind. When questioned by his comrades, James simply replied, "She's been there for me. Now it's my turn to be there for her." This sentiment, shared by soldiers on both sides of the conflict, highlights the mutual reliance that defined these relationships. Dogs, in turn, often displayed remarkable loyalty and bravery. In the chaos of battle, when even seasoned soldiers faltered, dogs stayed close to their owners, seeming to understand the dangers around them. One such dog, a mixed breed named Shadow, earned his name for his habit of never leaving his owner's side. During a skirmish in Virginia, Shadow's owner was struck by shrapnel and fell unconscious. As the Union troops were forced to retreat, Shadow remained with his owner, refusing to leave even as bullets whizzed past. Hours later, medics searching the battlefield found the soldier, still alive, with Shadow standing guard over him. Shadow's refusal to abandon his human companion saved the soldier's life, cementing the dog's place as a hero in the regiment. These bonds also fostered a sense of camaraderie among the soldiers themselves. A dog in the camp was rarely the companion of just one man. They belonged to the group, offering a unifying presence in a fractured world. Soldiers would take turns feeding, grooming, and caring for the animals, creating a shared responsibility that brought a semblance of normality to their lives. During moments of celebration or respite, dogs were often at the center of the activity, chasing after thrown sticks, playfully tugging at boots, or simply lying in the midst of the men as they laughed and talked. Yet these relationships were not without heartbreak. Many soldiers lost their canine companions to the perils of war, and their grief was palpable. In a letter to his wife, a Union soldier named Thomas described the death of his dog, Rusty, who had been hit by shrapnel during a skirmish. "He was braver than any man I've known," Thomas wrote, "and his loss cuts deeper than I ever imagined. In a world of chaos, he was my constant, and now the camp feels emptier than ever." These words echo the sentiments of countless soldiers who found solace in their dogs, only to lose them to the same cruel fate that claimed so many lives during the war. Despite the sorrow, the bond between soldiers and their dogs was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In a time of immense suffering, these animals provided not only practical aid but also a profound emotional connection, that helped soldiers endure the unendurable. Their loyalty, bravery, and love were a light in the darkness, reminding the men that even in the midst of war, there was still room for compassion and hope. The stories of these soldier-dog relationships endure not because of grand acts of heroism, but because of the quiet, unwavering presence that defined them, a bond that no battle, no war, could ever truly break. As the guns fell silent and the Civil War came to its bitter end, the soldiers who survived faced a new and uncertain challenge, rebuilding their lives in a fractured and grieving nation. For those who had shared the battlefield with loyal canine companions, these dogs became symbols of hope and continuity, helping bridge the chasm between the horrors of war and the possibility of a peaceful future. While many dogs returned home alongside their human comrades, others stayed behind, their lives intertwined with the battlefields where they had served so faithfully. Their legacy, however, lived on, a testament to the unique and enduring bond between man and dog. For soldiers, the transition from soldier to civilian was fraught with difficulties. The trauma of war left many grappling with invisible wounds, what we now understand as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. In an era when psychological struggles were often dismissed or misunderstood, dogs provided a vital and unspoken comfort to veterans. Their presence was grounding, offering the kind of steady companionship that no words or therapy could replicate. A dog's unconditional loyalty and affection created a space where soldiers could begin to heal from the scars of war, both physical and emotional. Take the story of Caleb, a Union soldier who had fought in some of the bloodiest battles of the war. When Caleb returned to his small Pennsylvania farm, he brought with him Duke, a black Labrador mix, who had been his companion throughout the conflict. Caleb's nights were haunted by nightmares of the battlefield, and his days were consumed by the struggle to adjust to a life that felt alien. Duke, however, remained by his side, a calming presence in moments of anguish. Caleb would often sit on the porch of his farmhouse, staring out at the fields he had once tended with ease but now seemed foreign. Duke would rest his head on Caleb's knee, as if to say, "You're not alone." Over time, Caleb found solace in caring for Duke, the daily routines of feeding, walking, and playing with him serving as a form of quiet therapy. For some veterans, the dogs they had served with became the last tangible connection to the men they had fought beside. Many regiments had adopted dogs as mascots, and these animals had become symbols of unity and resilience. After the war, the return of a regiment's mascot to its hometown was often a celebrated event, a poignant reminder of the camaraderie that had carried the soldiers through the darkest days. These dogs were seen not just as pets, but as living memorials to the sacrifices made by the men and their fallen comrades. One such dog was Sally, the brindle terrier, who had marched with the 11th Pennsylvania Infantry. After the war, Sally's story became legend, her loyalty during and after battles a source of inspiration for the survivors. When the soldiers of the 11th Pennsylvania erected a monument at Gettysburg to honor their service, they insisted that Sally be included. Today, her bronze likeness stands at the base of the monument, forever guarding the memory of the men she served alongside. For those who knew her, Sally was more than a symbol. She was a friend, a reminder of the bonds that had sustained them during the war. Not all dogs, however, found their way home. Many remained on the battlefields, either lost in the chaos of retreat or left behind by soldiers who could no longer care for them. These dogs often became part of the local landscape, adopted by nearby communities or living as strays in the ruins of war-torn towns. Their presence was a haunting reminder of the war's reach, their loyalty to the soldiers who had left them behind a poignant testament to their enduring connection. For the communities rebuilding after the war, dogs also played a crucial role in bridging divides. In a nation struggling to heal its wounds, these animals became unifying figures, transcending the divisions of North and South. Stories of heroic dogs spread through newspapers and veterans' reunions, their tales of loyalty and bravery serving as a rare source of common ground in a fractured country. It was not uncommon for Union and Confederate veterans to share stories of their canine companions at post-war gatherings, their mutual admiration for these animals helping to foster a spirit of reconciliation. The legacy of Civil War dogs also had a lasting impact on how animals were viewed in military and civilian life. Their contributions during the war demonstrated their potential as more than just companions. In the years that followed, dogs began to be formally included in military operations, their roles expanding to include search and rescue missions, message delivery, and guard duties. The lessons learned during the Civil War laid the foundation for the development of organized canine units in future conflicts. For the soldiers who had fought beside them, however, the legacy of these dogs was deeply personal. They were more than heroes or symbols. They were friends who had shared in the trials of war and the challenges of rebuilding. Their loyalty and courage had provided a beacon of hope in the darkest moments, and their companionship had made survival possible. As the years passed and the soldiers aged, the memory of their dogs remained vivid, a reminder of a time when humanity and compassion had persevered against all odds. Even today, the stories of these dogs resonate, their actions a testament to the enduring bond between humans and animals. In a time of unimaginable hardship, they proved that loyalty and love could flourish even in the midst of war. For those who lived through the Civil War, these dogs were not just unsung heroes. They were family, their presence a source of comfort, courage, and healing in a world desperately in need of all three.